most famous family, and also to become sovereign of a greater area of the planet than any other head of state on Earth. Chapter 1. C. Rex. The king is making his rounds of Windsor Great Park. Since succeeding to the throne at the age of 73, he has had much to absorb, both as head of state and head of the most famous family in the land. Among his new responsibilities, an optional rather than a hereditary one, is that of Ranger of the Great Park, a royal hunting ground for deer since the days of William the Conqueror. Today, the ranger's duty is to protect the wildlife, along with everything else in these 5,000 acres of parkland, woods and gardens. Together with his full-time deputy ranger, the king is slowly nudging towards a herd of red deer shielding from a gale in a small copse. He is particularly struck by a group of stags. The weight on their heads is amazing, reflects the king, the strength of their necks to support those antlers. It's an interesting observation from a man who is coming to terms with a considerable weight on his own shoulders, both figuratively and in actual fact, a few months from now, at Westminster Abbey. It's a scene to pique the artistic imagination, the metaphor of the stag as monarch, the awesome uneasy burden on the head that wears the crown. Being a new monarch in the 21st century is not the perilous existence it was in Shakespeare's time, but it still carries multiple challenges. A former private secretary points out one in particular. Charles III has to deal with a world that constantly needs to be reminded of the merits of monarchy. There were no doubts when the Queen came to the throne, it was just accepted, he says. Now people do have doubts. They may want a monarchy, but they also feel the need to be convinced. Moreover, the king is conscious, says his ex-aide, that the survival of the British monarchy was never inevitable, but that it has enjoyed a uniquely lucky set of historical circumstances. As the former private secretary puts it, the things which can bring a monarchy to an end have not happened in the 2 centuries since the French showed us that there could be an alternative. We haven't lost any major wars, we haven't had any huge economic disruption, and we haven't had a monarch who's behaved really disgracefully. It also helped that for more than 55% of the time the monarch has been a woman. The more that the late Queen continued to set new royal records, so the same was true of her eldest son. In 2015, for example, Elizabeth II overtook Queen Victoria to become the longest-serving monarch in British history. By then, the Prince of Wales had already broken Edward VII's record as the longest-serving heir to the throne, a good 4 years earlier. In 2013, the Prince also became the oldest heir, at the age of 64, when he overtook William IV. It made him, by some margin, the oldest person in history to succeed to the throne. 73 on his accession, and 74 at his coronation, his mother had been, respectively, 25 and 27. Some had predicted that his tenure would only be a caretaker administration in between the longest-reigning monarch in British history and a younger, more glamorous generation led by King William V. Over almost 3 decades, opinion polls would periodically show equal numbers, or even a majority of the public, preferring Prince William to his father as the immediate successor to Elizabeth II. These polls overlooked one essential point. Prince William had zero interest in displacing his father. As he told me shortly before the 2012 Diamond Jubilee, he tried desperately hard not to think about the destiny that lay ahead. That can wait until I'm a bit older, he added. The Princess of Wales's cancer diagnosis in early 2024 would make the prince even less eager for the top job. However, the king's response to treatment, his levels of fitness, and his relatively abstemious lifestyle, plus his parents' longevity, would suggest that the prince could still have a considerable wait ahead of him. Having earned his position after the longest apprenticeship in history, the king